majority of Americans favor establishing a nuclear weapons-free zone in the Middle East. That would include Israel, Iran, and any American forces deployed there. Well, you know, that's not even on the agenda. Actually, there are several such nuclear weapons-free zones developing in the world, and that's quite important. It's a substantial way of proceeding towards the rhetorical goal of the Obama administration, namely reducing or maybe eliminating nuclear weapons. And they're interesting. Just a couple of days ago, Africa finally, all the states ratified a nuclear weapons-free zone in Africa. There's only one country missing from supporting that, the United States and Britain, the two of them, because they insist on keeping nuclear weapons in Diego Garcia, which the African Union regards as part of Africa, as part of Mauritius. The US and Britain insist that it's not. They drove out the population and established a major military base there, which the US in fact is using for its Middle East wars. So that nuclear weapons-free zone has a gap in it, namely the part that the US is using for its wars in that region. There's also a South Pacific nuclear weapons-free zone, but there's a gap in that one too. The US has insisted that the Pacific Islands, the US Pacific Islands, be exempt from, because they're used for testing and storing nuclear weapons. In the Middle East, where it's really critically important, the issue isn't even discussed. You can't find it anywhere, but it's critical. Incidentally, the US and Britain have a formal commitment to a nuclear weapons-free zone. In further invasion of Iraq, they appealed to a Security Council resolution in 1991, which called on Iraq to eliminate weapons of mass destruction, which we now know they had done. But one paragraph of that resolution commits the signers to work for a nuclear weapons-free zone in the Middle East, in the entire region. Well, that's a commitment that holds for the United States and Britain beyond all others. Large majority of Americans agree, the rest of the world agrees, not on the agenda. No comment on that. Ignoring the will of the population is normal, so it's not, happens all the time. What's a little more interesting about the Iran case is that the United States is also ignoring the will of major sectors of corporate interest that have a special interest in the Middle East. The energy corporations would be delighted to have the threats end and to be able to exploit Iranian oil, but they're being disregarded too. Now that's a little more unusual. It happens, but it's unusual. And it tells us something about how state power is exercised and why. In fact, there is a state interest in isolating and undermining Iran that overrides the usual commitment to the interests of concentrated private power. It's something that you might call the mafia principle, a sensible principle. Disobedience can't be tolerated. It's if a storekeeper doesn't pay his protection money, the godfather has to do something about it. It may not need the money, but you cannot accept disobedience. It's a disease that can spread. Others can do it too. So you have to control it. In fact, the real reason for the Iran regime is rotten to the core, but that's not the reason why the US is hostile. It supports much worse regimes. Actually, the real reason was explained pretty eloquently by the editors of the New York Times back in 1953, when the United States and Britain overthrew the parliamentary government in Iran and instituted a brutal tyranny. The editors explained that this is a great thing. They said it's an object lesson to underdeveloped countries with rich resources that go berserk with fanatical nationalism, and it'll teach leaders of other such countries lessons in decent behavior. And that's a clear expression of the mafia principle. principle in an issue of great significance, namely what were called the stupendous resources of the Middle East. Thinking at the time in the government was that literally that if we can control Middle East oil, we can control the world. And we don't want anyone going berserk with fanatical nationalism and stealing our resources from us. Well, those are real reasons. It's a leading theme of world control, gets much too little attention. Well, what about not coming clean with the International Atomic Energy Agency? That's presumably true. Wouldn't be too surprising. But we really have to ask who is not coming clean with the International Atomic Energy Agency. So about 2 weeks ago, the IAEA did pass a resolution, important resolution. It was a resolution calling on Israel to join the Non-Proliferation Treaty, which it hasn't done, and to open its nuclear facilities to inspection. Now, the United States and Europe tagging along tried to block the resolution, but when they couldn't block it, they voted against it, but it passed anyway. That's an IAEA resolution. Israel, of course, disregarded it. As far as I know, it hasn't even been reported here, quite unlike Iran's possible evasions. Just today, the press reported that Obama assured Israel that he would not press in any way to have them open say anything about their nuclear facilities or have them open to inspection. Well, that's the real world as distinct from the doctrinal world. You can find the facts. You can find them on wire services reported on Al Jazeera. I actually happened to read them because I was in Mexico a week ago, and I read them in a Mexican press. So it's not a secret except for the people who matter, people in the United States, and that's a choice. What about evading Security Council resolutions? Well, it's true. Obama gave a major speech to the UN recently, very much applauded. He called on all states to observe the principles of non-proliferation, and the Security Council did pass a resolution, September 24th, which was hailed here as a great triumph for Obama in his struggle to contain Iran. It's worth reading the resolution. There's nothing in it about Iran. It's aimed at the United States, Israel, and India. The resolution calls for all states to recognize the Non-Proliferation Treaty, I'm quoting it, as the cornerstone of nuclear non-proliferation regime and the essential foundation for the pursuit of nuclear disarmament and for the peaceful uses of nuclear energy. Well, there are 3 states that have never signed the Non-Proliferation Treaty and have nuclear weapons: Israel, Pakistan, and India. And in all cases, their nuclear weapons programs are supported by the United States. That's what the major provision of the resolution is addressing. The second provision calls on all states to resolve peacefully, in accordance with the UN Charter, any problems in that context threatening or disrupting the maintenance of regional and global stability. Well, who's threatening force in the region? Only 2 states, the United States and Israel. They're threatening to use force, even the threat is in violation of the UN Charter, in order to block Iran's alleged nuclear weapons. So that's the content of the resolution. It has nothing to do with the reporting. Can Iran build nuclear warheads? Is that what it's trying to do? What are they concealing? Regular question. It's worth noting that there are some who aren't concealing anything, though it is concealed here. If you take a look at the international business press, London Financial Times, main business journal in the world, you can discover on the front page that India greeted the Security Council resolution I mentioned by announcing, quoting, that it can now build nuclear weapons with the same destructive power as those in the arsenals of the world's major nuclear powers, the United States and Russia. It's in violation of the resolutions, of course, in violation of Obama's rhetoric, and it heightens tensions with Pakistan, which have already come very close.